Clarity begins in the quiet space inside you, the space most people never enter because their minds are always racing, always reacting, always scattered. A noisy mind makes every decision harder, every challenge heavier, every emotion louder than it needs to be. When your thoughts clash against each other with no order or intention, you lose your ability to see the truth in front of you. You lose your sense of direction. You lose the power to steer your life with confidence. But the moment you step into stillness, everything begins to shift. The world outside might remain chaotic, but the world within becomes a place of strength, understanding, and purpose. A quiet mind is not an empty mind. It is a focused mind, a trained mind, a mind that knows what deserves attention and what doesn't. Most people never experience this level of clarity because they allow every fear, every memory, every worry, and every distraction to enter their minds without resistance. They treat their mental space like an open door, letting noise walk in and take control. But clarity begins when you close that door and decide that not every thought deserves a place in your mind. A quiet mind sharpens your perception. It helps you recognize what truly matters, not what screams loudest. It helps you see the difference between real problems and imagined fears. It helps you evaluate situations from a place of strength instead of panic. Think about how many times confusion has delayed your progress, how many times emotional noise has pushed you into decisions you later regret, how many times you felt overwhelmed not because the situation was impossible, but because your mind was unorganized. When the mind is cluttered, you can't see solutions. You can't see opportunities. You can't even see your own capabilities clearly. But when the mind becomes still, everything aligns. The path becomes visible. The decisions become simpler. The emotions become manageable. And you feel something powerful rising inside you. Control. A quiet mind gives you power, not by adding anything to you, but by removing what weakens you. Anxiety loses its grip because you aren't feeding it with constant thoughts. Fear becomes quieter because you stop rehearsing the worst possible outcomes. Irritation fades because you refuse to let minor distractions pull you in. Suddenly, your energy returns to you. Your awareness becomes sharper. Your thinking becomes deeper. You stop reacting to life and start directing it. This is the foundation of clear thinking, the ability to silence the unnecessary so the essential can speak. When your mind is quiet, your intuition becomes louder. Your vision becomes stronger. Your self-respect grows because you're no longer controlled by your impulses. You begin to trust yourself more because you see how much wiser you are when your mind is still. This kind of clarity is not an accident. It is a decision. It is a discipline. It is a daily choice to sit inside your mind and clean out what doesn't belong there. It is the refusal to be dragged around by every thought that appears. It is the commitment to create inner order even when the world around you is chaotic. And once you taste the power of a quiet mind, you never want to return to noise. You realize that most of your limitations were mental illusions, built from thoughts you accepted without questioning. You understand that control was always available, you just couldn't access it through the noise. With clarity, your confidence rises because you know exactly what you're doing and why you're doing it. Your calmness becomes unshakable because no random thought can pull you off your path. Your decisions become stronger because they are made from intention, not impulse. A quiet mind becomes your strongest weapon, your greatest advantage, and your deepest source of peace. And once you build it, everything in your life begins to align with a new sense of power, direction, and inner stability most people never realize. How much of their life is controlled by the quiet conversations happening inside their own mind. The inner dialogue is constant, shaping emotions, choices, and actions without them even noticing. When this inner voice is chaotic, negative, or confused, it steers life into fear, hesitation, and self-doubt. But when it is disciplined, intentional, and focused, it becomes a source of strength that carries you through challenges with calm certainty. The mind talks even when you don't ask it to, reminding you of mistakes, exaggerating threats, replaying old wounds, or inventing new worries. And if you don't take responsibility for this dialogue, it becomes the architect of your limitations. Thinking clearly begins with taking control of this voice, not suppressing it, not fighting it, but guiding it. You redirect it the same way you guide a river, turning something wild into something powerful. You choose what thoughts are allowed to stay and which must be dismissed. Because once you understand that thoughts are instructions to the mind, you stop letting destructive ones take root. When the inner dialogue is left unchecked, it creates confusion. It tells you that you are not good enough. It exaggerates the size of your problems. It convinces you that you are running out of time. It pushes you to overthink instead of act, fear instead of trust, complain instead of build. This is why so many people feel mentally exhausted even when nothing physical has happened. Their own thoughts are draining them. But the moment you begin speaking to yourself with clarity, everything changes. You begin separating facts from fears, truth from emotion, purpose from distraction. You start asking better questions. What can I control right now? What outcome do I want? What thought strengthens me in this moment? These questions force the mind to shift from panic to power. They redirect attention toward solutions instead of problems. They create a mental environment where clarity grows naturally. And you'll notice that the calmer your inner dialogue becomes, the more control you gain over your reactions, your decisions, and your life. There is a simple truth that transforms your entire mental state. The mind will believe whatever you repeatedly tell it. If you feed it chaos, it will create confusion. If you feed it fear, it will respond with hesitation. If you feed it doubt, it will weaken your actions. But if you feed it clarity, strength, and direction, it will begin working in your favor. You become the author of your internal world instead of a victim of your thoughts. This is why intentional self-talk is so powerful. It's not about pretending everything is perfect. It's about reminding your mind of the truth. You are capable. You are intelligent. You are in control. And you can face whatever lies ahead. When your inner dialogue supports you, decision-making becomes easier. Emotions become manageable. Confidence grows naturally. You stop second-guessing yourself because the internal noise that once confused you is now aligned with your vision. You think clearly because your mind finally works with you instead of against you. You act calmly because your thoughts are no longer attacking you. And you stay in control because you have built a powerful mental environment where intention leads and doubt fades. This mastery of the inner dialogue becomes the foundation of a stronger, calmer, sharper version of you. One who moves with purpose and refuses to be driven by fear or confusion. Emotions become storms only when the mind is untrained. When an event triggers fear, anger, or frustration, most people get swept away instantly, not because the emotion is too powerful, but because they never learned how to step back from it. They treat every feeling as a command instead of a signal. They believe every emotional surge is the truth, even though emotions are often temporary reactions, not accurate reflections of reality. When you detach from emotional storms, you stop letting temporary feelings create permanent decisions. You stop letting impulses shape your future. You stop letting inner turbulence pull you into actions you will regret later. Detachment does not mean suppression. It does not mean pretending emotions don't exist. It means creating space, a mental distance, so you can observe what you feel without becoming controlled by it. This separation allows you to respond with intelligence instead of reaction. It gives you the ability to think while others panic, to stay calm while others crumble, to act with direction while others chase the emotion of the moment. Emotional detachment is a form of power because it protects your clarity. Every emotional storm begins with a thought, a memory, or a perception. But the mind magnifies it. It takes a spark and turns it into a fire. It takes a moment of fear and builds a story of danger. It takes a single setback and paints a picture of failure. Once the mind starts amplifying emotions, it becomes harder to see the truth. The emotion grows louder than logic. The reaction feels stronger than the intention. And this is where most people lose control, not because the emotion is impossible to handle, but because they allow it to expand without awareness. When you learn to pause, even for a few seconds, you interrupt this cycle. You weaken the emotional wave before it becomes overwhelming. You give yourself the chance to breathe, to observe, to think. This pause is the doorway to control. It is the moment when the mind transitions from being reactive to being conscious. And in this conscious state, emotions start to lose their power over you. You begin to question them, you begin to understand them, you begin to guide them instead of letting them guide you. Detach from emotional storms by acknowledging the emotion without letting it decide your actions. When you feel anger rising, observe it like a distant wave rather than letting it crash into your behavior. When fear appears, recognize it as a warning sign, not a barrier. When frustration emerges, treat it as information, not instruction. This mindset shift changes everything. You stop seeing emotions as enemies and start seeing them as signals. Signals that something needs attention. Signals that something matters to you. signals that some perspective needs adjustment. Once you understand this, emotions lose their ability to control your direction. You realize you are not the storm, you are the observer of it. You have the authority to decide how you respond, how you move forward, and what meaning you attach to the moment. This level of emotional detachment builds inner strength. You become calm even in uncertainty. You become steady even when life becomes unpredictable. You maintain clarity even when the mind tries to pull you into old patterns of fear or frustration. Calmness is not the absence of emotion, it is the mastery of emotion. And this mastery allows you to stay in control of your life at the moments when it matters most. When your emotions no longer dictate your choices, you move with purpose. When your reactions no longer overpower your intention, you think with clarity. And when you detach from storms instead of getting consumed by them, you rise above the noise that traps most people. This is the foundation of true control. The ability to feel deeply yet respond wisely, to experience emotion without surrendering to it, and to remain calm even when the world inside you begins to shake. Clarity is not a gift, it is the result of disciplined thought selection. The mind will always produce thoughts, some useful, some destructive, some neutral, and some completely irrelevant to your purpose. Most people never filter these thoughts. They allow every idea, every fear, every doubt, and every impulse to enter freely as if the mind is a public space instead of sacred territory. But a strong mind understands that not every thought deserves attentio, and not every internal voice deserves respect. The ability to think clearly is built on the skill of choosing which thoughts you will entertain and which you will reject. When you begin treating your thoughts like guests, you recognize that you get to decide who stays and who must leave. You don't allow negative assumptions to settle in. You don't let unproductive fears run around freely. You don't let trivial concerns take energy away from your vision. You choose what you will focus on, and that choice shapes your emotional state, your decisions, and your future. Discipline of thought selection is the foundation of mental power. Every thought carries influence. Some thoughts strengthen you, reminding you of your goals, your abilities, and your path. Others weaken you, pulling you into comparison, fear, hesitation, or regret. Without discipline, the mind gives equal weight to all thoughts, and this creates chaos. A powerful mind, however, evaluates each thought before accepting it. It asks, does this thought serve me? Does it help me think clearly? Does it move me forward? If the answer is no, the thought is dismissed without hesitation. This is the same way you learn to ignore noise when you're focused. You don't fight the noise, you simply refuse to give it your attention. The moment you begin doing this internally, clarity becomes your natural state. Your energy stops leaking into pointless mental battles. You stop replaying old mistakes. You stop predicting failure before you even act. You stop feeding fears that aren't real. Instead, your mind becomes filled only with thoughts that build direction and self-control. You feel lighter because your mental space is no longer crowded with unnecessary noise. Disciplined thought selection also builds emotional stability. When you choose your thoughts, you indirectly choose your emotions. If you choose thoughts of gratitude, confidence rises. If you choose thoughts of purpose, focus sharpens. If you choose thoughts of calmness, your reactions become measured and intentional. But when you unconsciously choose fear-based thoughts, emotions follow, anxiety grows, doubts multiply, and small problems suddenly feel impossible. This is why most people feel controlled by their emotions. They never controlled the thoughts that created those emotions. Once you understand this connection, you realize that emotional clarity begins with mental discipline. You can regulate how you feel by regulating what you think. You can build calmness by selecting thoughts that support calmness. You can build self-control by choosing thoughts that strengthen it. You can build direction by choosing thoughts aligned with your values and goals. The discipline of thought selection requires practice, but once mastered, it becomes a powerful inner habit. You begin catching thoughts before they influence you. You begin filtering mental noise before it becomes emotional turbulence. You begin noticing patterns which empower you and which weaken you. This awareness makes you mentally sharp. You don't waste energy on thoughts that don't deserve your attention. You don't entertain ideas that pull you away from your purpose. You don't negotiate with thoughts that bring confusion. Instead, you create a mental environment where clarity dominates. A mind trained to select its thoughts becomes unstoppable because it no longer reacts to life blindly. It chooses how to interpret everything. And with that choice comes freedom. You move through life with calmness, purpose, and a sense of control that others can't understand. You rise above internal chaos because you have mastered the one skill that shapes all others, the discipline of choosing what your mind is allowed to think. Stillness is often misunderstood. Many think it means doing nothing, slowing down, or pausing life. But true stillness is not inactivity. It is preparation. It is the sharpening of the mind before action. It is the quiet internal alignment that allows you to move with precision, intention, and strength. When you learn to sit with your thoughts without letting them run uncontrollably, you begin building a type of mental strength that most people never access. Stillness teaches you to observe your mind instead of reacting blindly to it. It teaches you to recognize the patterns that drain your energy and the patterns that build your power. In stillness, you gain a deeper awareness of what truly matters to you, what direction you need to take, and what impulses you must ignore. This internal clarity becomes a weapon. It allows you to see opportunities that chaos hides. It allows you to understand yourself at a level that noise never permits. Stillness is the training ground where the mind becomes strong enough to remain calm even in the midst of pressure. Most people run from stillness because they are afraid of what they might hear inside themselves. The noise of the external world is comfortable. It distracts them from their own thoughts, their own fears, their own weaknesses. But the mind that avoids stillness becomes weak. It becomes dependent on external stimulation. It loses the ability to stay focused without distraction. It becomes restless, impulsive, and easily overwhelmed. When you never learn to sit quietly within yourself, your thoughts control you rather than you controlling them. But when you embrace stillness, you learn how to break this cycle. You learn how to let thoughts rise without letting them dominate you. You begin to understand that mental strength is not about suppressing your thoughts, but understanding them, guiding them, and choosing which ones deserve your energy. Stillness teaches you the difference between noise and truth. It reveals the thoughts that come from fear and the ones that come from purpose. When you build this skill, life becomes easier because your mind is no longer an enemy. It becomes your ally. Stillness builds emotional resilience. When the world becomes chaotic, your mind does not automatically follow. You remain steady. You remain composed. You remain aware. Instead of being triggered by stress, you evaluate it. Instead of being consumed by anxiety, you observe it. Instead of being overwhelmed by pressure, you analyze it. This gives you a powerful advantage. You begin making decisions from logic instead of panic. You speak with intention instead of emotion. You act with precision instead of impulse. This is the strength that comes from inner stillness, the strength to remain unmoved by chaos. You stop reacting to surface-level problems and start understanding the deeper layers of every situation. And because your mind is quiet, you process information more clearly, think more strategically, and respond more intelligently. Stillness also builds confidence. A calm mind does not doubt itself the way a chaotic mind does. When you are still, you connect with your intuition. You hear your deeper wisdom more clearly. You trust your judgments because they come from clarity, not confusion. People who never practice stillness often question themselves constantly because their thoughts are too scattered to reveal the truth. But with stillness, your inner voice becomes steady. It becomes grounded. It becomes reliable. And this gives you a sense of certainty that shows in the way you walk, the way you speak, the way you make decisions. You carry yourself differently because you are no longer controlled by mental noise. The more time you spend in stillness, the stronger your mind becomes. You begin to recognize your patterns, your triggers, your strengths, and your blind spots. You develop the ability to stay calm under pressure because you have trained your mind to resist chaos. You develop the ability to think clearly because you have removed the clutter that once clouded your decisions. You develop the ability to stay in control because you have built a mind that does not panic, does not scatter, and does not break easily. Stillness is not a luxury. It is a form of mental training, and the person who masters it becomes unshakable, able to see clearly, act calmly, and maintain control even in the most demanding moments of life. Pressure reveals the truth about your mind in moments where everything feels urgent, heavy, or uncertain. Most people collapse into confusion because they have never trained themselves to stay composed under intensity. They allow pressure to distort their thinking, shorten their perspective, and trigger impulses that lead to poor decisions. But pressure is not the enemy. The lack of mental preparation is. When you understand how to stay calm in difficult moments, pressure becomes fuel instead of fear. It sharpens you. It awakens you. It forces you to rise above your old limits. Calmness in pressure is not about pretending the situation is easy. It is about refusing to let anxiety guide your actions. When you stay calm, you expand your ability to think clearly. You maintain access to your logic, your creativity, and your inner strength. A calm mind sees possibilities that a fearful mind can't even recognize. The real challenge is not the pressure itself, it's maintaining clarity inside it. Most people respond to pressure with emotional reactions instead of intentional thinking. They rush decisions, they panic, they assume the worst. They try to solve everything at once, which only increases the overwhelm. This mental chaos amplifies the pressure and makes the situation look far more difficult than it truly is. But when you stay calm, you create space between the situation and your response. You don't allow urgency to control your actions. You don't allow fear to distort your perception. You slow the internal noise so the truth can appear. Calmness is the force that prevents pressure from hijacking your mind. It lets you break problems into pieces instead of facing them as one giant threat. It allows you to evaluate options without rushing. It prevents emotional exaggeration, and it gives you the strength to stay focused on what matters instead of drowning in what doesn't. Calmness turns chaos into clarity. To stay calm under pressure, you must build the habit of grounding yourself in the present moment. Pressure grows when the mind jumps into the future and imagines everything that could go wrong. It grows when the mind gets stuck in the past, replaying mistakes or failures. But clarity exists only in the present, the place where you can think, act, decide, and adjust. When you bring your attention back to the present, you reclaim control. You remind yourself that the only thing you can influence is the next step. And once you focus on that, the pressure becomes manageable instead of overwhelming. This present moment awareness strengthens you. It prevents fear from driving your decisions. It allows your logical mind to take the lead. It gives you the ability to respond intelligently instead of reacting emotionally. Staying calm is not a personality trait. It's a trained mindset. It's a commitment to stay rooted in clarity, even when the situation tries to pull you into chaos. Pressure becomes an opportunity for the mind that knows how to stay calm. It becomes a test that reveals your strength. It becomes a chance to refine your thinking and grow your resilience. Every time you respond to pressure with clarity instead of panic, you build mental confidence. You prove to yourself that you can handle more than you once believed. You teach your mind that intensity does not break you. It strengthens you. And this becomes a deep internal belief that transforms the way you move through life. You stop fearing challenges. You stop avoiding responsibility. You start trusting your ability to figure things out. Calmness becomes your advantage, your power, your anchor. It keeps you steady while others shake. It keeps you focused while others lose control. And it positions you to make wise decisions in moments T. Hat. Define your future. When you can stay calm under pressure, you become unshakable. And that strength stays with you in every area of your life. Self-control begins with understanding that the first battle you must win is always the battle within yourself. Every day there are impulses, distractions, temptations, and emotional triggers pulling your attention away from what truly matters. Most people lose control not because they lack strength, but because they have never trained their inner world to obey their intentions. They let impulses speak louder than intelligence, cravings louder than discipline, and emotions louder than purpose. But when you commit to mastering self-control, you begin taking back the authority that was always supposed to be yours. You begin choosing your actions instead of letting reactions choose them for you. You stop being led by temporary feelings and start being guided by long-term principles. Self-control is not about deprivation, it is about direction. It is the ability to hold yourself steady when your mind wants to run, when your emotions want to explode, and when your impulses want to dominate your decisions. This inner steadiness becomes a powerful foundation for clarity and calmness because the mind is no longer scattered. It becomes aligned with your values. One of the biggest reasons people lose control is they never pause between stimulus and response. Something triggers them, and they immediately react without thinking. This automatic reaction gives their emotions full control, leaving no space for logic, intention, or awareness. But self-control is built in the space between what happens and how you choose to respond to it. When you learn to pause, even for a brief moment, you gain time to evaluate your thoughts instead of becoming them. You gain time to recognize whether your reaction is coming from fear, insecurity, anger, or clarity. You gain time to redirect yourself before your impulses take over. This pause becomes a shield that protects your decisions from emotional distortion. It turns inner chaos into inner structure. It allows you to maintain clarity even when the world around you becomes overwhelming. The simple act of pausing gives you authority over your reactions, and this authority is the core of self-control. Self-control also thrives on the discipline of consistency. You cannot build a strong, steady mind by making random efforts. You build it by practicing small acts of self-control repeatedly until they become a natural part of you. Choosing not to argue when anger tries to provoke you. Choosing to stay focused when distractions call for your attention. Choosing patience when impatience tries to rush your process. Choosing discipline when comfort tries to weaken your progress. Every time you choose the higher action, you strengthen your mental foundation. You teach your mind that you lead, not your impulses. And over time, these small choices accumulate into a powerful identity. The identity of someone who is in control, someone who moves with intention, someone who acts from strength rather than weakness. This identity gives you confidence because you no longer fear losing control. You trust yourself deeply. The highest form of self-control is the ability to regulate your inner world even when no one is watching. External pressure may force temporary discipline, but true mastery is revealed in private moments when you could choose the easier path, the emotional path, or the impulsive path. Yet you don't. You choose the path aligned with your values. You honor your goals even when it is inconvenient. You honor your growth even when no one else will ever notice. This is the level of self-control that creates internal freedom. You are no longer a prisoner of urges, desires, or emotional storms. You act from intention, not impulse. You move with clarity, not confusion. You respond with strength, not weakness. And this mastery radiates into every area of your life. Your clarity strengthens, your calmness deepens, and your sense of control becomes unshakable. Self-control is not about perfection, it is about power. The power to lead your own mind before the world tries to lead it for you. Clarity becomes possible only when you understand the power of mental order. A disorganized mind cannot think clearly, act calmly, or stay in control. When your thoughts are scattered, your energy becomes scattered. When your priorities are unclear, your actions become unfocused. When your inner world is crowded with fears, assumptions, and unresolved worries, your decision-making becomes chaotic. Mental order is the process of bringing structure to your thoughts so your mind becomes a place of clarity instead of confusion. Most people carry unnecessary mental clutter. Old memories, imagined fears, unfinished decisions, emotional conflicts, and endless internal noise. This clutter drains clarity because the mind cannot process everything at once. But when you begin organizing your inner world, prioritizing what matters, releasing what no longer serves you, and simplifying your mental environment, you regain the ability to think with sharpness and direction. Mental order is not about having a silent mind, it is about having a focused one. Mental order starts with identifying which thoughts deserve space in your mind. Not every thought is important. Not every worry is meaningful. Not every assumption is true. But the untrained mind entertains everything equally, giving energy to thoughts that don't deserve attention. This creates mental congestion. But when you train yourself to sort your thoughts the same way you would sort physical belongings, clarity rises. You begin to ask, is this thought useful? Does this thought align with my goals? Is this thought based on reality or fear? When you stop accepting thoughts automatically, you take back ownership. You remove mental clutter by discarding what is irrelevant, inaccurate, or emotionally exaggerated. You release thoughts that drain your energy and replace them with thoughts that strengthen your direction. This mental organization becomes the foundation of inner calm because confusion no longer dominates your thinking. Mental order also requires understanding the difference between problems you can solve and problems you must release. Many people exhaust their mental energy worrying about things outside their control, replaying conversations that cannot be changed, or imagining outcomes that may never occur. This drains their mental strength and creates unnecessary emotional turbulence. Clarity grows when you stop battling what cannot be changed and start focusing on what can. You bring order to your mind by directing your attention to the areas where your actions matter. You conserve your energy by refusing to fight battles that exist only in your imagination. When you separate what is real from what is projected, you stop amplifying your stress. Your mind becomes lighter, cleaner, and more peaceful. This allows you to see solutions where you once saw only obstacles. It allows you to approach challenges with logic instead of fear. It allows you to act calmly because your mind is no longer trapped in mental loops that lead nowhere. Another part of mental order is learning to complete internal decisions instead of carrying them endlessly. Indecision is one of the biggest causes of mental clutter. When you leave choices unresolved, your mind keeps revisiting them, draining energy and creating low-level stress. But when you commit to a direction, even if the decision is small, you free your mind from this constant internal back and forth. The moment you choose, your mind becomes clearer because it no longer wastes energy debating the same thoughts repeatedly. This builds inner confidence because you stop doubting yourself. You stop overthinking every detail. You trust your ability to make choices and adapt as needed. Mental order strengthens your identity because your actions align with your intentions. You move with calmness because your mind is no longer overwhelmed. You stay in control because you know exactly where your thoughts are going. Mental order creates a mind that is focused, steady, and ready for action. It removes the distractions that once controlled you. It eliminates the noise that once clouded your judgment. It gives you the structure to stay calm under pressure and the clarity to make decisions with confidence. When your inner world is organized, your outer world becomes easier to navigate. You stop reacting emotionally. You start responding intelligently. You stop feeling overwhelmed. You start feeling grounded. Mental order is not a luxury, it is a necessity. It is the silent strength behind calmness, the engine behind clarity, and the foundation of unshakable control. Focus is the bridge between thought and action, between clarity and results. A mind without focus scatters energy across countless directions, accomplishing little while exhausting itself. Most people never experience the power of true focus because they allow distractions, random impulses, and fleeting emotions to pull their attention constantly. Focus is not about doing more. It is about doing what matters with precision, consistency, and intensity. When you focus, your mind stops jumping from thought to thought and begins concentrating on the one thing that moves you forward. Every decision becomes sharper, every action more intentional, and every emotion more controlled. Focus does not eliminate challenges, but it gives you the power to see them clearly, analyze them calmly, and respond strategically. A focused mind turns chaos into opportunity because it refuses to waste energy on what does not matter and channels every resource toward what does. Distractions are the enemy of calm action. They create mental noise that makes it harder to think clearly and easier to react impulsively. When your attention is divided, your emotions amplify because your mind struggles to process multiple inputs at once. Anxiety rises, confusion increases, and self-doubt creeps in. But focus restores order. It trains the mind to remain on task, to prioritize, and to reject what is irrelevant. This mental discipline is not natural for most people. It must be developed through deliberate effort. Each time you redirect attention back to your priority, you strengthen the neural pathways that support clarity, calmness, and control. You teach your mind that it does not need to chase every stimulus that appears, and that true power comes from sustained concentration. Focus becomes a form of resistance. Resistance to chaos, resistance to impulsive reactions, resistance to mental scatter. The more you practice it, the more automatic it becomes, and the more your mind operates as a precise instrument rather than a noisy, uncontrolled machine. Focus also amplifies your ability to act calmly under pressure. When the mind is concentrated, it does not panic in the face of difficulty. It does not become overwhelmed by uncertainty. Instead, it sees the challenge clearly, evaluates the options carefully, and moves with purpose. Focus allows you to slow down internally even if the external world is moving fast. It creates a buffer between stimulus and reaction, giving you the space to choose your actions intentionally. Without focus, you react emotionally. With focus, you respond intelligently. The disciplined mind channels energy to what matters and ignores everything else, and this creates calm. The more focused you are, the less external events control your internal state. Focus and calmness are inseparable because one feeds the other. Focus reduces noise, and calmness allows focus to thrive. Developing focus requires conscious training. Start by identifying your highest priorities and devoting uninterrupted attention to them. Resist the temptation to multitask or chase trivial thoughts. Remove mental and physical distractions that fragment your energy. Train your mind to return to the task at hand whenever it wanders. This repeated practice strengthens mental endurance and builds clarity. Over time, focus becomes effortless. Your mind naturally resists distractions, your actions flow with precision, and your emotions remain steady. When combined with mental order, emotional detachment, and self-control, focus creates a mind that operates like a laser, sharp, powerful, and unstoppable. It is through this concentrated energy that you maintain control in chaos, act calmly when pressure rises, and think clearly when the world tries to overwhelm you. Focus is not just a skill, it is the engine that drives mental mastery. The space between stimulus and response is where true power lives. Most people live without it, reacting instantly to every impulse, every emotion, every trigger. They let external events dictate their internal state, letting fear, anger, or excitement control their decisions. This is why so many people feel powerless, exhausted, and frustrated. Their minds are ruled by automatic reactions rather than deliberate intention. But the moment you recognize that there is always a gap between what happens and how you choose to respond, everything changes. This space is not empty. It is full of opportunity. It is where awareness, clarity, and choice converge. It is the moment where you can observe the emotion rising within you, analyze the thought attempting to take over, and decide consciously which path to take. Mastering this space is the cornerstone of calm, clear, and controlled action. The challenge is that most people never practice this gap. They have been conditioned to react immediately, to respond emotionally, and to let circumstances dictate behavior. But reaction is weak because it is dictated by the external world, not guided by internal principle. Choice, on the other hand, is strength because it is guided by intention. By consciously pausing in the space between stimulus and response, you reclaim authority over your life. You stop being a slave to fleeting emotions, impulsive thoughts, and external pressures. You start seeing the situation clearly, weighing your options logically, and deciding deliberately. This space allows you to respond with intelligence, not instinct. It allows you to act from clarity, not chaos. It allows you to maintain calm even when everything around you is moving too fast, too loud, or too intense. The moment you train yourself to inhabit this gap, you gain a mental advantage that few people ever develop. The power of this space grows with practice. Begin by noticing the first signs of an emotional reaction or mental impulse. When irritation, fear, or stress arises, resist the urge to react immediately. Instead, pause and observe what is happening internally. Ask yourself, what is the best response here? Does my emotion align with my intention? Which action moves me closer to clarity?
Tie calmness and control.
Even a few seconds of conscious observation interrupts automatic reactions and allows higher reasoning to take over. Repeated practice strengthens this skill, and over time the pause becomes natural. Your mind begins to automatically insert this gap between stimulus and response, giving you the freedom to act with wisdom rather than instinct. This gap becomes your refuge, your decision-making power, and your anchor in times of chaos. Mastering the space between thought and reaction transforms your life because it gives you the ability to maintain authority over your inner world. When you can consistently use this gap, clarity becomes your default state. Calmness becomes your habit. Control becomes your identity. You no longer need external conditions to feel steady. Your inner stability is self-generated. Pressure, distraction, and emotional turbulence no longer dictate your behavior because you have created a mental buffer that allows conscious choice. The space between stimulus and response is the silent engine behind every wise decision, every intentional action, and every moment of composure. It is here that the mind becomes a tool instead of a prisoner. And when you fully inhabit this space, you step into a higher level of mental mastery, a level where thinking clearly, acting calmly, and staying in control is not just possible, but natural. The The mind naturally looks for problems, but a controlled mind automatically begins to seek solutions. Most people focus on obstacles, setbacks, and threats because their attention is drawn to what is wrong rather than what is possible. This tendency creates frustration, fear, and indecision. But the mind that is trained for clarity and calmness shifts its focus. It begins asking, what can I do? What steps move me forward? What is within my control? When the mind focuses on solutions rather than problems, energy stops leaking into fear and wasted worry. You begin to see opportunities where others see dead ends. You begin to notice options where others see only difficulty. And this perspective itself creates calm because your attention is on action, not panic. A solution-oriented mind is a powerful mind because it transforms challenges into steps toward growth, mastery, and progress. The process of training the mind to see solutions begins with conscious repetition. Every time a problem arises, pause and ask yourself, what can I do right now to improve this situation? Most people do the opposite. They dwell on the problem, magnify it in their imagination, and let it dictate their emotions. This reaction feeds anxiety and drains clarity. But when you shift the focus to solutions, your mind starts to rewire itself. It learns to evaluate situations from a place of reason rather than fear. It begins automatically generating strategies, assessing resources, and prioritizing actions that lead to progress. This habit strengthens mental resilience because the mind becomes oriented toward action, control, and empowerment instead of chaos, distraction, and helplessness. The more you practice solution-focused thinking, the more it becomes instinctive, allowing clarity and calm to remain present even under intense pressure. Solution-oriented thinking also strengthens confidence and self-trust. When the mind constantly identifies potential solutions, it begins to trust its own judgment. You stop waiting for external guidance because your mind has learned to generate answers. You stop feeling powerless in the face of challenges because you have proven to yourself repeatedly that you can respond effectively. Confidence grows not from arrogance or assumption, but from repeated evidence of capability. Each problem faced with a solution-focused mindset becomes a lesson in self-reliance. Each challenge successfully navigated reinforces the belief that you are capable of thinking clearly, acting calmly, and maintaining control. This internal proof builds a strong foundation for consistent mental strength, emotional composure, and deliberate action. The ability to see solutions also changes how you perceive obstacles. Challenges are no longer terrifying or paralyzing. They become opportunities to apply clarity, calmness, and control. Your mind evaluates the situation objectively, identifies potential strategies, and takes deliberate steps forward. Even setbacks become manageable because the focus is on what can be done next rather than what went wrong. This mindset cultivates patience, persistence, and resilience, all of which are critical for maintaining calm and control. When your mind is trained to see solutions automatically, stress is reduced because problems no longer feel overwhelming. You gain perspective, you gain direction, you gain the mental capacity to act with precision instead of reaction. Over time, this solution-oriented mindset becomes a hallmark of inner mastery, allowing you to navigate life with clarity, calmness, and unshakable control. No matter what challenges arise, staying calm under pressure is not a skill reserved for a few gifted individuals. It is the result of consistent mental training and deliberate practice. Most people react to pressure with anxiety, fear, and impulsive behavior because they have never built the internal structures necessary to maintain composure. When challenges arise, the mind tends to amplify threats, magnifying their size and urgency far beyond reality. The heart races, thoughts scatter, and decisions become clouded. But calmness is not the absence of pressure. It is the mastery of your response to it. It is the ability to observe what is happening, process the information clearly, and act intentionally without being hijacked by emotion. Calmness allows the mind to stay sharp even when the body feels tension. It transforms pressure from a source of weakness into a catalyst for focused, effective action. One of the keys to maintaining calm is controlling your internal narrative. Pressure only becomes overwhelming when the mind interprets it as a threat rather than a challenge. Most people react emotionally because they unconsciously tell themselves stories of failure, inadequacy, or impending disaster. These stories trigger fear, panic, and self-doubt. But when you consciously choose your internal narrative, you reclaim power. Instead of saying, I can't handle this, you focus on, what can I do to handle this effectively? Instead of imagining catastrophe, you assess reality and your available resources. By directing your thoughts toward problem solving rather than panic, you maintain composure and clarity. This deliberate control of your internal dialogue under pressure is the foundation of calm action. Breathing and physiological regulation are also critical components of calmness. When pressure rises, the body responds automatically with stress. Heart rate increases, muscles tense, and the mind becomes hyper-alert. Most people allow this automatic reaction to dominate them, which intensifies panic and reduces decision-making ability. But by consciously slowing the breath, relaxing the body, and centering attention on the present, you create a mental environment where clear thinking can occur. Physical control reinforces mental control. Calm becomes a habit because the body signals to the mind that there is no need for panic. This mind-body coordination allows you to act deliberately, respond with clarity, and maintain composure even in high-stakes situations. Calmness under pressure also relies on perspective. When you detach from the immediate emotional surge and consider the larger context, challenges shrink relative to your capacity to handle them. Most people lose control because they fixate on the intensity of the moment rather than the overall picture. By stepping back mentally, evaluating options, and prioritizing what is truly important, you prevent pressure from dictating your actions. Calmness is the ability to act with intention in the midst of urgency. It is the skill of maintaining focus when chaos surrounds you, of thinking clearly when others panic, and of staying in control when the mind is tempted to surrender to fear. The person who masters calm under pressure transforms stress into clarity, reaction into deliberate action, and chaos into controlled progress. Over time, this ability becomes a defining trait of mental mastery, allowing you to navigate life's challenges with unwavering confidence and poise. Discipline is the invisible force that holds clarity, calmness, and control together. Without it, even the sharpest mind and the calmest temperament can falter under pressure. Most people underestimate the role of daily discipline because they think mental strength is something that appears suddenly or is innate. In reality, mental mastery is built through repeated choices, small, deliberate actions that reinforce the mind's ability to remain focused, resist impulses, and stay composed. Discipline is the bridge between knowing what is important and acting on it consistently. It ensures that clarity does not fade, calmness does not crack under stress, and control remains intact even when external circumstances are chaotic. Every decision to practice restraint, every commitment to focus, every refusal to react impulsively strengthens this inner framework. Discipline is not a punishment. It is the architecture of personal power. The foundation of discipline is habit. Habits are the patterns that structure the mind and guide behavior automatically. Most people fail to maintain control because their habits are reactive rather than intentional. They allow routines of distraction, procrastination, and emotional reactivity to dominate their days. But when you build habits rooted in mental order, focus, and deliberate action, discipline becomes effortless. Small actions repeated consistently, prioritizing thoughts, pausing before reacting, focusing on solutions, maintaining composure, accumulate into a powerful mental routine. Over time, this routine rewires the brain, making clarity the default, calmness the habit, and control the natural response to challenges. Discipline is not about rigidity. It is about creating mental structures that allow freedom within order. The more structured your habits, the more resilient your mind becomes in the face of uncertainty. Discipline also requires accountability to oneself. It is easy to act with control when everything is convenient or when others are watching. The real test comes when you are alone, when no one sees your decisions, and when it is easier to give in to impulses. True discipline is maintained in these private moments, the times when you resist distraction, act with patience, and adhere to principles despite comfort or desire. This internal accountability builds self-trust because you prove to yourself repeatedly that your actions are intentional and aligned with your values. Each act of self-discipline reinforces clarity because it eliminates mental clutter created by regret, hesitation, or guilt. It reinforces calmness because you are no longer tossed by inner conflicts. It reinforces control because your mind is now your ally rather than a battlefield of impulses. Discipline strengthens the ability to persevere through difficulty. Life will always test patience, focus, and composure. Challenges, setbacks, and pressures are inevitable. Without discipline, the mind succumbs to frustration, distraction, or fear. With discipline, the mind maintains clarity, the heart maintains calm, and the will maintains control. Discipline converts effort into mastery. It creates consistency where chaos once prevailed. It allows the mind to function at its highest capacity even when external circumstances are demanding. The person who cultivates discipline gains more than control over actions. They gain authority over themselves. They move through life with a steady hand, a focused mind, and a calm presence. Discipline is the backbone of mental mastery, the glue that holds clarity, calmness, and control together, and the engine that allows you to act deliberately and achieve consistently in every area of life.